Taoiseach, there are just 3 weeks left in the Dáil term. 3 weeks for government to see sense and introduce an emergency budget to tackle the cost of living crisis. If the government doesn't intervene now, many households will be pushed over the edge because they are on the brink today and they simply can't wait for October for budget 2023. The crisis is getting worse, as you know, Taoiseach. Yesterday, the central bank reported that 1/3 of families are just making ends meet. That's up from 1/4 of families in January. Supermarket analysts Cantor say that the sharp increases could add €453 to the average annual grocery bill. Again, that's a jump of €100 on their estimate from last month. And workers and families, as you know, Taoiseach, are finding it increasingly difficult just to afford the basics, struggling to put a roof over their heads, food on the table, fuel in the car and clothes on their kids' backs. Esther Pugh is the manager of the Bernardo Centre in Loughlinstown, and here's what she told the media yesterday, Taoiseach, because I think this encapsulates the situation. She said, "We would have children coming into the service wearing their pyjamas for day clothes, specifically bought to be day clothes. The big worry is electricity running out. Families don't have money to run their washing machine and tumble dryers." She said, "I've worked at Bernardo's for a long number of years, and what I'm seeing now is the kind of deprivation we would have seen back in the 80s. It is bad, and there's no point in saying otherwise." These are heartbreaking words, I'm sure you'll agree, Taoiseach, and they capture everyday life for so many families now. And we're now at a point where having a full-time job is not a guaranteed protection against the sharp edge of this crisis. Some households with 2 incomes are really struggling. So what hope, what chance do those on low pay have? We know, Taoiseach, that there are international factors at play. We accept that. But we also know that this cost of living crisis is a catastrophe for our society. I have been contacted by parents who are worried that they're raising their children now for emigration. I've been contacted by young people themselves who don't want to leave but have their bags packed for Canada and Australia. They say they can't afford a life at home, and that is the terrible vista again of forced immigration looming for us. Tá Chowley inera na fedja a Taoiseach. Anocht, Iran rún hin féinar an rialtas búséid éigen dála a thuirteasteach. Ní féidir le hibrithe agus le Chowley fannacht ar buséid fiche trí. Tá daoine ag stracals, tastíon taciúcht uhu anish. Tonight, Sinn Féin brings a motion to the Dáil and it calls on government to introduce an emergency budget to deliver and extend cost of living supports for workers and for families. We shouldn't have to bring this motion, Taoiseach, but government has buried its head on what is a state of emergency for households. So I want to call on every TD to support this motion. I want all of us to work together to ensure that people get the relief that they need so badly and that they get it as a matter of urgency. The truth is, Taoiseach, the government can't clock off in 3 weeks' time and leave families fighting to stay afloat. That would be wholly wrong. We need an emergency budget and the workers and families of Ireland need it now. Taoiseach.
Thank you, Deputy McDonald. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, I want to join in welcoming and congratulating our boxing heroes, Amy, Derval and Evelyn. Boxing has brought great honour to Irish sport down through the decades, continues to do so. We pay tribute to the coaching fraternity and our boxing community, to Jim O'Neill and his team. Well done. And it's fantastic the degree to which young people are encouraged, nurtured through the great sport of boxing. Could I say, like everyone else in this House, we are deeply concerned about the enormous cost pressures and impact of the current inflationary cycle on people, on households, on workers. And I want to make it very clear that myself, the government, are absolutely determined to deal comprehensively with this. Putin has waged a war, first and foremost on the people of Ukraine, through murder and terror, as witnessed in yesterday's appalling, inhumane bombing of a shopping centre, 18 killed innocent civilians, ongoing. But parallel with that, he has deliberately, premeditatedly created an energy war, an energy crisis through withholding supplies, causing a massive increase in the price of energy across Europe and the world. Likewise on migration, creating the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II, through the terror of bombing towns, villages, and forcing Ukrainians to flee their land. Internal displacement of about 7 million. And then through food, weaponization of food, and creating a famine to add to the challenges that Africa is already experiencing. So that is the context and that is the background. It's a very real one. At the European Union Council meeting last week, very real concerns about what the winter will bring. And particularly if gas is cut off fully by Russia from the rest of Europe, and particularly the major states that use Russian gas. That's now a very real prospect already in quite a number of states. That has happened. So this is not something we can chase month by month. There has to be a comprehensive response that gets us through the entirety of next winter in particular. And it's a response that has to take on board pay, and there have been discussions between public service unions and the government. There have been settlements in the private sector over the last while, and those will continue. There has to be, and in relation to that, then you have to deal with tax, you have to deal with the expenditure profile of every single government department, which is very much linked to the cost of living issue. If you take an issue like childcare, healthcare costs, and so forth. So the idea of doing something in a sort of isolated silo way is just not the correct response. It does have to embrace pay, expenditure, tax, and a specific cost of living package that would have application in this calendar year to meet the challenges that people are facing. And it's wrong to say, as the Sinn Féin motion does, that government has done nothing or condemns what the government has done. I mean, the government has increased the fuel allowance, for example, by 55%, or €404. And that's something already that we've done. About 2.4 billion in measures have been allocated to the cost of living issue. Fuel allowance, we cut taxes and increased social welfare rates in the budget last October. But we've also since then, in the measures in February and beyond, reduced the excise duty on petrol, diesel and green diesel, saving motorists between €9 and €12 each time they fill their tank. And we've reduced VAT from 13.5% to 9% on gas and electricity bills. We've also given a €200 energy credit to every single household across the country, cut the annual PSO from 52 to minus 75, launched a national retrofitting scheme. We've introduced new grant rates that will cover around 80% of the typical cost of attic and wall installation. We've put caps on school transport fees for families. We've cut public transport by 20% with an additional 50% cut in fares for young people. We've lowered the threshold for the drug payment scheme. So it's just not fair or balanced to say the government has done nothing.
Thank you. Time is up.
But what we do need to do is to have a comprehensive package, which we are working on and which we will deliver for people to alleviate the undoubted pressures on people at the moment, and that will be there right throughout the winter.
So for all that list that you have recited, for all of that, Esther Pugh, Bernardo Centre, Loughlinstown, has told the story of what's happening on the ground and the real fear and the real stress and pressure that families are living with. Our motion, by the way, does not say that the government did nothing. On the contrary, we recognise the international factors. Putin is despicable. His war is despicable. But the job of this House, of your government in particular, Taoiseach, is to protect Irish families and Irish workers now, in the here and now. And you say that you are concerned, that you're determined. But there is no urgency in the response, and you say that you can't chase this matter month to month. I'm not asking you to, but I am asking you to recognise that families have to live and exist day to day, week to week, and they are struggling and struggling badly. For the life of me, I cannot understand why it is that you resist what is so obviously needed. We need a comprehensive, targeted set of measures to give people support, breathing room, now, in the here and now. The idea that they can wait as the government decides on their package until October is simply not fair. It's not acceptable, Taoiseach. And I fear that you're being dismissive of the real-life experience that I'm setting out for you. So I appeal to you again to do the right thing and to deliver this comprehensive package, and to do it with urgency, with an emergency in mind, and we need that emergency budget, Taoiseach.
Your motion does say what you said it didn't say. Your motion, and I quote, condemns the hardship, anxiety and desperation being felt by households across the country as a direct result of the government's refusal to introduce measures. That's what your motion says, to support workers and families. You know that's not true. People are feeling anxiety and pressure correctly because of Putin's war. There's no come on about it. You need to call this out consistently, and not for electoral and political reasons replace Putin with the Irish government, because that's what you're doing. And you may not want to do it, but that is what you are doing, because your motion says that. You ignore the 2.4 billion in measures that we've allocated already, and you just ignor it.
We cite the 5.6 million more that you have in tax revenue.
An increase in the fuel allowance of 55%, the €200 to every single house.
So people aren't struggling.
The point I'm saying here is you have wrongly, and you're interrupting again because you know you interrupt when you're on the back foot. The bottom line is that is what your motion has said.
Time is
what
up
we
now,
want
please.
to do is something comprehensive that matters to people, not just this month, but right throughout the winter period. Because it's going to be a very difficult winter, and we need a very comprehensive set of measures to help people get through that, because we understand fully, and it's not good enough for you to say that people on this side of the House are being dismissed. We are not. We share as much as the pain and concern that people have out there, and we are as concerned about people out there as you are, and anybody else is.